Welcome, everybody, to the Eddie Liger Power Hour for the Midwestern Marks, a live stream. I'm here for you people. There is a big wrestling tournament going on right now, but I'm here. We're streaming. We're talking about what's important. So it should be an interesting show today. I've got a handful of interesting topics, and I'm happy to have you with me. How's it going, Cobalt Steel? Eli Ace, Frank, Melena C says she found this channel through her boyfriend. So happy for this. Well, so am I. What a great way to find the channel. Shout out to your boyfriend. Sounds like they have great politics. Louis Logics, we all need to start true social accounts and troll the MAGA Fs. Absolutely. That's a great idea. We have a truth social account. I haven't posted anything on it. I just made one when Truth Social became a thing. But yeah, League of Legends strike. Yes, the League of Legends professional players in the U.S. are threatening a strike. Well, they were threatening a strike. It sounds like their strike got busted. We'll get into it. We'll do that first, right after I play our intro.
Hey, have you guys seen this? We are getting blasted in the ass by the state liquor tax.
Oh. Blasted in the ass?
Mac, we have the same conversation every year. There's nothing you can do about taxes.
You guys might want to think about voting every once in a while.
What has voting ever done? Why are you coming down? Voting? Who am I supposed to vote for? Am I supposed to vote for the Democrat who's going to blast me in the ass, or the Republican who's blasting my ass?
Politics is just all one big ass
It is
blast.
a coast to coast,
get your ass blasted.
nationwide
You know
ass
what?
blasting.
No more. You guys are such morons. If you knew anything at all about politics, you would know that that is not true.
Leandra, it's just some jerk getting into office so he can get out for the payday.
Right, the guy's running for office. He's what payday?
I see it every year. I mean, some clown runs for office, drops out of the race, and gets a big chunk of dough. I mean, you have to be a real low-life piece of shit to get involved in politics.
And that is how the Democratic Party was formed. What's up, everyone? Good to be here. Good to be doing another show. I hope you liked that intro today. I thought up that myself. Well, actually, I didn't think of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia myself, but I thought that would make a good intro. Pretty funny little segment there. So politics is just one big ass blast. Yeah, I couldn't think of a better reason for why we should endorse and support the Cornel West campaign and use the Cornel West campaign to point out the hypocrisy of American politics, the hypocrisy of the two bourgeois parties, the Democrats and Republicans, the backwardsness and the undemocratic nature of the two-party system itself, and use this opportunity once every 4 years when the American masses have their eyes on politics to point out how messed up the system is, how politics is just one big ass blast. Because everybody knows it, right? They just said it on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And everybody loves that show. That's not true, but a lot of people love that show. Everyone's aware Congress has like a 17% approval rating or so. Nobody feels that the Democratic or Republican establishments are looking out for them or serving their needs. So let's show people the ass blasting nature of American politics and blast away the system to replace it with dictatorship of the proletariat. Hello, Comrade Eddie. I'm sure that you know Comrade Chemical Mind is on TikTok now, so let's show our comrade some support. Oh, sweet, yeah. I'll definitely follow him and give him some shout-outs. Let's glorify the system run by terror. Terror, why so much Lenin? Every system is not run by labor, but every system is based on labor and humans interacting with nature. And under capitalism, the capitalists use terror and they use the monopoly on violence that they hold, meaning the state power that they hold, to enforce those relations of production and keep the wage laborers and the workers in their place, continually laboring, despite the fact that the value of their labor is exploited and taken by the capitalist class that doesn't labor as surplus value. So there's no more authoritarian system than capitalism, other than maybe feudalism or slavery. But the capitalists use authority to keep us in our place and keep their place at the top of society, despite the fact that they don't create the things society needs to grow. They don't create the wealth of society. So Lenin's idea was to smash that state apparatus and create one for the workers. And there is, some revolutionary terror when the revolution happens, because the peasants and the working masses have been oppressed and exploited for years and years and years. So when they rise up against the ruling class and the dictatorial state apparatus, there's clashes and conflicts. This is what we call a revolution. But these revolutions were also how capitalism came about as well. There was terror, revolutionary terror in the French Revolution, when the emergent bourgeois class led the peasants against the aristocracy. And this established capitalism in Europe. There was revolutionary terror, you could call it. I've never heard it described as that, but you could call it in the American Civil War, which was basically the Second American Revolution that established capitalism as the dominant mode of production in the country and erased the slave mode of production for the most part. It would persist in different forms, but made capitalism the main basis of America. But there was a war that was fought. And before that war, there were a bunch of slave revolts and uprisings. And slave owners were killed. You could call that revolutionary terror. That doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing, though. It doesn't make the Civil War or the slave uprisings a bad thing. It's just the nature of things when you're being oppressed by the barrel of a gun, when you're being oppressed by a dictatorial state that wants to exploit your labor. Is this actually a live video or a recording? This is an edited recording. Real. I'm answering your question live, but everything else is edited and recorded. Just kidding. I hope that didn't confuse you. We're actually live. I'm here. I'm talking to you right now. Real time. Speaking with the people, which is how we love to do it at Midwestern Marks, for the most part. I've been doing some more edited videos lately. By the way, did a video recently with the Left of the Projector podcast, and I hope you all like that. I really enjoy doing the movie reviews, and I feel like it's good to get or preach Marxist education. I shouldn't use the word preach. That makes it sound religious, but give people Marxist education through pop culture and through entertainment media that they're watching anyways. So I like the movie review ideas, and we've decided next we're going to review Come and See, which I guess is not a movie that is super popular in America or that people are watching anyways. It's a Soviet film, but it's a very famous Soviet film about World War II. So I'm very, very excited to check that out. And yeah. So look forward to that. And I hope you are enjoying the movie reviews. I hope you enjoyed the review of Nightcrawler, the review of District 9. Yeah. I just saw your review. It was good. Thank you. It's actually AI Eddie. Yes, this is a deep fake. I was tired of doing the streams, so I just deep faked myself. If you're doing a review, if you're going to review it with him, that's fine, but work on the tightness of your script. Well, hey, the thing that people need to understand is there's only so much time in the world. And there's a lot of labor that goes into these things, putting out this online educational content and fun stuff. And we're all our own editors, schedulers, producers, videographers, audio engineers, right? We're doing it all ourselves. So it takes a lot of work, like to make a script and edit it down to be really tight and sharp. And I know that looks good. And we want to have more of that production value if we can. I've worked with editors in the past, and we want to do more of that and collaborate together, so we can increase the production value of our educational content and propaganda. But, there's only so much we can do. So the style of the Left of the Projector podcast is we both watch the movie, take notes, and then we just share those ideas in conversation with each other. So if you watch that podcast, everything that I say is like bouncing off of something that he said. So it's supposed to be conversational in style. But I mean, I get what you're saying. When I watch my own videos to study them, I'm like, yeah, I wish I had an editor, and I wish it was tighter. But Come and See is less of a film, more than an unforgettable experience. To prepare to have your state of consciousness altered. Yeah, I was like gonna watch it right after I got excited to watch it and was going to do it right after I talked to Evan of the Left of Projector podcast, but I was kind of tired at the time and I started watching it. I'm like, I'm not ready for this. This movie is like going to take some energy to watch and sit and focus on, because it is just wild. And like, it's not like necessarily a fun watch. Like, it's artistic and it looks cool, visually appealing to the eye, but like, there's some horrific stuff, and I got some deep messages. I got you, Reclaimed. If you want to help us edit our videos, we can definitely work that out too. Okay, so what should we start with? Let's start with the League of Legends strike, because I think this is something you nerds will be interested in. We are a show that streams on Twitch, after all, so we might as well talk about the Twitch drama. And guess what? I'm becoming a real Twitch streamer, because I've even got, rather
It's
than
4
some
a.m. and I
independent
can't.
journalist or Consortium News or People's Dispatch or one of these journalistic outlets that I love so much. I got Penguin Z for you guys, you nerds, you Twitch fans, and YouTube fans. This guy I actually like this guy. I don't know what his politics are, but he's very, he's got a ton of subscribers on Twitch and YouTube. He's fairly logical in everything I've seen. But he's reporting on the League of Legends strikes, and he has a similar relationship with the game League of Legends that I do. For those who don't know, this is the only thing I'll say, and then I'll play it. League of Legends is like the most toxic game. Like, it's fun, it's addicting, you can play it with your friends, but like, I remember it used to drive me and my friends into a rage because it's really competitive and the games take 30 to 45 minutes. So like, if someone rage quits, it ruins the game for you. Your team has like basically no chance of winning then, and you're stuck there for the next like 20-30 minutes at least. So it's easy for people to get enraged when they lose a game or when someone messes up the game, and it's known for being really toxic. This is where I developed my ability to be a content creator and deal with the hate that I get from people. I played League of Legends in high school.
It's 4 a.m. and I can't sleep because the air conditioning stopped working. And since I live in Florida, it's shot up to over 80 degrees in my house right now, which is suboptimal snoozing temperatures. I'm basically taking a one-punch man lunch. And I figured if I can't sleep, I might as well talk about something that's on my mind. You may see that I'm sweating right now. I'm feeling the heat, but that's nothing compared to the heat that all League of Legends professional players are feeling in the North American region. Now, I don't know about you. I can only speak for little old me here, but when I think of esports, the first game that pops into my noodle is League of Legends. That, for me, is the game that really popped off the esports scene and made it mainstream. Of course, I did watch MLG for Halo 2 and all of that, and of course, a bit of StarCraft, but League of Legends is when I really got hooked in the space. And now, Riot Games seems beyond determined to ruin it. Like they're doing everything they can to put the LCS in the grave, which is wild. Now, I'm about 4 years sober from League. I was highly addicted from seasons 3 to 6, roughly 7, and that was an addiction harder to kick than heroin, I imagine. But I did it. And I still do keep up because I do really still love the pro scene of it. And to see everything that's happening in the space right now is more upsetting than the intro to Pixar's Up. It's very odd to see Riot unleashing this fury from the deepest pits of hell upon the LCS. They're basically waging a war on American soil with the NA region. Now, if you do keep up,
that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it's because the players have a union and they're threatening strike. So to break their strike, Riot is threatening to cancel the LCS, the like esports gaming championships or whatever. I don't follow it at all, but it's so interesting that I'm sure they make a lot of money off this LCS event too. But if the players are threatening to strike and threatening to ruin it, these corporations will do anything to bust up the strikes, anything to bust up the players' union. They recently came to a settlement.
With League of Legends and the esports scene, you'll probably know that North America's been a little lackluster. They're not out there with the strongest competition on Summoner's Rift at the moment, but that doesn't mean that Riot needs to fucking...
The Americans are always just getting destroyed by the Japanese teams and other teams. Thank you so much, Ross. Really appreciate it. Charlie could do with a shave. Probably. I probably could too, though. I got my rap mustache going. Thank you so much, Ross. The official sponsor of Midwestern Marks, Ross Iron Coil. Wayne Coil.
Slap them around for some reason. Now, this is actually a very deep situation with a ton of layers to the onion, so I'm just going to show you a quick screenshot that lays out some of the basics, and then I'm going to dive in a bit deeper. But this is just a general overview of what's going on. You can pause the video here to read all of this, but I'll just give you a quick nutshell breakdown. It all started in the Challengers League, which is fundamentally where players get developed into the top tier talent. You know, this is where players get to the big stage. They go through that to try and make it to the big stage where they're competing for all the clams, all the steamed ham. And there was some requests to change things around with how that whole system works. And Riot got a little wacko mode with some of the changes they wanted to implement.
So you get it. Players Association, Players Union was resistant to changes, threatened strike. Company breaks the strike. Story is old as time. Not as old as time, but as old as capitalism, at least. Playing out everywhere. Playing out in gaming. In every sphere of capitalist society, corporations dominate, and the employers seem to have won the battle ultimately, although I'm sure the players got something from threatening strike, but the strike itself was ultimately called off, and the union reached an agreement. At least they have a union. How crazy is this? The League of Legends players have a union. The professional League of Legends video gamers have a union that can threaten strike, but there's no union for UFC fighters or even WWE wrestlers because they're kept as private contractors, just like Uber and Lyft drivers are. So the company doesn't have to, the UFC and WWE don't have to give them the benefits that they would have to give employees. Or the right to unionize. They can't, I mean, there is no way for private contractors to unionize. They're not even considered employees in a workplace. They're just considered their own entity who the company hires on a case-by-case basis per event. So I guess the gamers are more organized than the athletes, which I guess maybe makes sense. Maybe the gamers are more class conscious, more well read when it comes to this stuff, but doubt that will change after the merger of WWE and UFC. Are they merging? Did WME IMG buy the WWE? No way. I mean it would make sense. I'm looking it up. Oh, yeah. What the hell? I didn't even see this. So Endeavor, which is essentially the same thing as WMEIMG. One of them is like the shareholder group, the group of shareholders who basically owns the UFC. And the other one is like the technical name for the company that owns the UFC or whatever. But looks like they're buying the WWE, which shows a huge merger of the combat sports market, a huge consolidation. And to the point where like you have entertainment media, WWE, something that's not even a combat sport, not like boxing or karate or wrestling or judo or whatever. It's an entertainment, not even a competition. It's just entertainment. The athletes are really talented and they get really, really worn out and they have to do crazy stuff, but it's a different thing than the UFC. But it's still merging, and this entire market for stuff like this is being consolidated by these shareholders who aren't giving the fighters health care, who aren't letting them unionize, as we said, who are paying the undercard fighters well under $40,000 to fight in the cage as they make these massive profits and accumulate more and more and more wealth. Not good. Wait, gamers have a union? I did not know that. Yeah, we all got to join if you play League of Legends. Professionally, at least. The Atlantic wrote an article, or the Athletic, not the Atlantic, back in 2020 showing 80% of MMA fighters support unionizing. Oh, really? I bet they do. But we see what happens to every fighter who advocates for a union, including Francis Ngannou. The UFC's own heavyweight champion was not safe. And now Dana White spends every waking second trashing him in the media. And this is, I'm assuming that's Leslie Smith. Because Leslie Smith is a hero for the MMA fighters and for their class struggle against Dana White and Endeavor and these shareholders, because she advocated for a union, and the UFC did not forgive her for it, and they cut her after a win, which is very rare. Usually, obviously, they don't want to get rid of you if you're winning your fights, unless you're speaking out about the company, unless you're speaking out about fighter pay, unless you're demanding a union or demanding that they pay the fighters health care because they're bringing in millions and millions and millions of dollars in profit every single year. 79.4% to be exact of MMA athletes reached as a part of the Athletics inaugural fighter survey. That's a really good idea to survey the fighters about stuff like this. Said they would be in favor in organizing with their peers in a way comparable to the professional unions and associations in other sports. Only 6.5% of fighters said they would oppose such a move. Probably the ones like Conor McGregor and Chael Sonnen, who have made a bunch of money because they're good trash talkers and good fighters. But they want as big of a piece of the pie for themselves as they can get. 14.1% said they were unsure, preferred not to answer. And those, the majority of those are probably yeses. People just don't want to, like I said, get on the UFC's bad side, get trashed by Dana White in the media because you're advocating for the fighters. And I mean, if you really want to get mad, we can listen to Dana White respond to stuff about fighter pay. We'll read a little bit more of this first, and then maybe we'll play that. But the worst part about being a fighter is not getting paid what we're owed and what we deserve, not having a union to back us up. One surveyed fighter under contract at PFL said, and Francis Ngannou has been advocating for the fighters over at PFL lately. 170 professional fighters were asked. There it is in graph form. MMA promoter contracts are some of the most heavy-handed in any sporting industry. They're designed to tie up talent and restrict free agency for real stars as much as possible. Yeah, and that's one of the things Francis Ngannou, the UFC's heavyweight, demanded in his new contract was, I need to be allowed to go do boxing matches, like what McGregor was allowed to do with Floyd Mayweather, because it made the UFC a lot of money. Ngannou said, I want to be able to go do boxing matches. I don't want to be just restricted to MMA and just restricted to this promotion. So he's trying to change the game. Talks about how the UFC screwed their fighters with a Reebok deal that took away a lot of the fighter sponsorships. And yeah, there's just, like I said, there's no health care. There's all sorts of problems with fighter compensation and fighter pay. It's well documented. But every time Dana White is asked about it, who's the CEO of the UFC or owner or whatever, he just goes off.
Because I don't give a shit. When I got 20-something-year-old Jake Paul, a fucking YouTuber, talking about fighter pay, or these other guys on the internet, my philosophy is always this: it's nobody's fucking business what these fighters are making. None of these guys are under some type of gag order in their contract. Any fighter, they can come out and tell you what they make. Ask them what they make. What'd you make tonight? They can tell you. They don't tell you. And why they don't tell you? They don't want you to know. I wouldn't want you to know either. Never.
That's such a distortion, too, because Dana has bashed fighters for revealing what they make in the past. And a lot of times he calls them liars. So the idea that they just don't want you to know is not true. They don't want Dana to bash them for it. Here's the normal kind of capitalist rhetoric. This is a career. This isn't a career. This is an opportunity. I'm giving you an opportunity to be rich. You should want to fight for free. I'm giving you this great opportunity to get half naked in a cage and get brain damage. I shouldn't need to give you health care. It's an opportunity.
Hey, we had a positive test this week. We haven't seen that, but it was a little different this time because it was a fighter that fought here 3 weeks ago. So I'm curious, did that trigger any kind of protocol or anything different that had to be done?
It's going to happen. If you look at how many fights we've been pulling off with how many fighters, very few people, including my staff, everybody have tested positive. So people are going to test positive.
It's been a couple weeks since he kind of said he wanted to give up the belt.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it, but you get the idea. Dana freaks out and says, he pays the fighters really well. Demetrius Johnson has come out and said he gets paid much better in ONE FC. Here,
So the UFC underpaying its fighters has been going on for a while now, and besides the small increases in fighter pay and the big increases to specific fighters to keep them quiet, not much has changed.
So that's the other excuse Dana makes. He goes, look at how much money Conor McGregor's making. Look at how much money so-and-so is making. He points to the richest people in the sport who have their own whiskey businesses outside of the UFC.
One of the big mistakes many people make when defending the current fighter pay is saying things like this.
That's at least $20,000, and he has to go work a second job. It's like, that's his choice. He can quit. $20,000 will last you a couple months.
If you work a 9 to 5 and you get paid $20,000 or $50,000 in a single month, that in itself is a lot of money. However, you don't have a manager who takes 20% of that. And when you work a 9 to 5, you also don't have a long list of expenses such as flights, trainer or coaching fees, gym fees, medical testing, and many more. And even when your job does require some of these expenses, such as specialty training or traveling, they are covered by your employer, and except for taxes, all of your salary can be spent on you.
So the fighters, because they're private contractors, they also have to pay for their own or their team's flights, their coaches' flights, and sometimes hotels and stuff. It's just ridiculous. Stuff that you should never have to pay for, that your employer should be taking care of or taking care of. I stopped being a diehard MMA/UFC fan when the Reebok stuff happened. I was more of a Pride FC fan anyways. Yeah, the Reebok stuff was terrible because the fighters were complaining about fighter pay, and Dana White kept saying, we're taking care of it. The UFC's taking care of it like we always do. We always take care of our guys. Everybody's always criticizing me, but we take care of our guys. And the solution that he was talking about, the way he was going to take care of the guys, was this Reebok deal, which he said was going to bring the fighters all these new sponsorships and all this new money. But what it did was made it so they had to exclusively be sponsored by Reebok, which was managed by the UFC. So they could no longer have whatever sponsors they wanted on their shorts or on the flags that they hold up behind them before the fights, which was a huge source of money for a lot of fighters. So fighters were very vocal about losing thousands and thousands of dollars. Brendan Schaub actually left the sport at that point because he could make more money podcasting and, keeping a lot of his sponsors in that aspect. So yeah, it's been bad. And then Dana's just, talked about how the Reebok deal is the best thing ever. And these fighters complaining about how much they're making are all a bunch of liars. It's wild. He single-handedly killed my love for martial arts. Don't let him do that. It's just the capitalist distortion of martial arts. The sports and the arts themselves are still beautiful. I still remember the Attitude Era. Is that suck it? Is that what the Attitude Era was? Yeah, I remember that. Why is Dana White not getting sued for CTE? Millions of dollars will be spent by the public for the healthcare needs of the thousands of athletes with CTE as a result of MMA. Right? He's not paying for their healthcare at all. So the fighters and the public are strapped with the costs, which are heavy. And I love MMA, but there is a risk of brain damage. But what I don't love is the slap fighting thing. Dana White's new slap fighting league, where fighters are defenselessly standing there with hands down and getting smoked in the face by a palm, which is basically a punch. And there are reports that even UFC veterans who have some kind of name power, at least, are being offered $2,000. $2,000 to do the slap fights. He's paying them $2,000 to show up and slap each other in the face until someone gets knocked out. And you want to talk about the cost of CTE and the medical bills that are going to be associated with this. $2,000 isn't even going to get close to cutting it. Not even close. This is insanity. This is pure insanity. This is just taking advantage of people who are in a desperate situation and have no better option in life but to join Dana White's slap fighting league and get $2,000 to get CTE. And you see it, like, a lot of these guys aren't athletes. A lot of them aren't even big and strong guys. They just look like normal dudes who are probably down on their luck and in a position where they'll do just about anything for $2,000. It's like bum fights, but franchised out. Exactly. It's like back in the day, you might see this stuff on the internet. You might see it like coming out of some promotion in a country without much regulation, where it's being held illegally in some warehouse. But now it's like out in the open. It's Dana White pushing this. And we talked earlier about how Endeavor, the company that owns the UFC, or the shareholder group that owns the UFC, has consolidated this entire market. They've consolidated the WWE, UFC, and everything else. The only thing they have to expand to is stuff like this. And driving their fighters' wages down. That's the only way they have to keep profits increasing. Crazy. One sec. Something's wrong with my layout. Where is it? Oh, there we go. That's what I want to do. Only 2,000. How much did White make from that match? Who knows? Who knows? But someone could calculate it, and it would be a lot. He claims the slap fighting is extremely profitable, even though so many people have been hating on it, including UFC fighters. One film that I would like to see a review is called Mission to Moscow. It's a film by Warner Bros. Based on the book of the same name, 1941, by Joseph E. Davies, who was one of the former U.S. ambassadors to the USSR in the mid-30s, and he had met with Stalin and witnessed one of the Moscow trials, which he says were actually genuine, and the defendants were indeed guilty. And his book gives an objective and overall positive account of the USSR. I'll check that out for sure. Tis beautiful outside. It is. I'm going to the beach later with my brother and sister, so that'll be fun. Not as fun as doing this stream, though, of course. All right, next story. Well, I guess what we should cover next is that there were reports that a right-wing coup was being plotted in Colombia. Some people were calling it a soft coup attempt. But the right-wing forces were gathering. It says here, this is Redstream.net. Colombians have been taking to the streets en masse across the country in the face of a looming right-wing coup to support leftist President Gustavo Petro's reforms. Over 400 political leaders worldwide signed a statement warning a soft coup is underway in Colombia. So Colombia, if you don't know, has long been one of the most U.S.-infiltrated countries in the world. A country that is swarming with right-wing paramilitaries who kill more social leaders like priests and social workers and teachers and healthcare leaders than any other country in the world by far. In 2022, there were over 200 social leaders killed. The year before that, there were over 140. And this is supposed to be a country where a peace agreement was signed. The U.S. told FARC, the left-wing armed militias, to lay down their arms, and they signed a peace agreement. But since that peace agreement was signed, these U.S.-backed paramilitary groups have only increased the amount of civilians and social leaders that they're massacring. A while back, a bunch of Colombian paramilitary bosses were extradited to the U.S. when they were going to be charged with certain crimes, and the U.S. gave them cushy sentences and made it so their testimonies didn't have to be public, so that they couldn't expose their connections to the United States or United States-backed military dictators in Colombia like Alvaro Uribe. So now a socialist president comes to power via election, Gustavo Petro, amid repression and violent attacks on activists and organizers from the right-wing U.S.-backed paramilitaries who cover Colombia. And it's so bad, like it's hard for us to even understand in the U.S. how bad or how prevalent these armed right-wing militia groups are in Colombia. Hugo Chavez actually called it the Israel of Latin America once. If you know anything about Israel, that should give you an idea of what it's like. So these forces exist. The forces who would be able to launch a coup against Petro have been in Colombia for years. They've been prepped prepped by the U.S. for a long, long time. There are something like 200 NGOs in Colombia. There's been more and more financial activity in Colombia, funneling of money through USAID and the NED in the past few years. And now they're ready to act against Petro. But the Colombian masses, the left-wing organizers and activists who brought Petro to power in the first place, a former left-wing rebel, Gustavo Petro, hit the streets en masse to show their solidarity with the current government and their opposition to the right-wing coup. Here it says the massive protests broke out in Barranquilla, Medellin, Santa Marta, Cali, and Bogota. I tried to get too fancy with my Spanish accent there. I got confused. Amongst other cities, President Gustavo Petro and Colombia's first black vice president, Francia Marquez, led the protest in the capital. In a speech, Gustavo Petro compared the situation to the right-wing coup against the leftist Peruvian president Pedro Castillo that we talked about on this stream a lot. That happened earlier this year. A soft coup is a coup. It is a coup against the popular will, said Gustavo Petro, announcing, if they dare to violate the popular mandate, the people of Colombia will come out from every corner, under every stone. Since Petro's inauguration less than a year ago, the first leftist government in Colombia's history has been under fire from former generals, colonels, and members of the Colombian military. Generally far-right leaders or U.S.-backed leaders in the Colombian military. Furthermore, their strong far-right wing opposition, what I was talking about with those right-wing paramilitaries, coupled with the influential oligarchy, sees its capital threatened by Petro's reforms and has coordinated campaigns against them, of course. So, a joint statement called A Soft Coup is underway in Colombia argues that a soft coup seeks to protect the interests of Colombia's traditional powers from the popular reforms that would raise wages, improve healthcare, protect the environment, and deliver total peace to the country. So this is from TikTok. Here are the left-wing protests in opposition to this coup attempt, which is surely being backed by the U.S. And if it's not, the U.S., as I said, is responsible for the prevalence of armed right-wing groups in Colombia anyways. Yeah, very cool. If Eddie's the communist Joe Rogan, does that make Carlos the communist Jorge Masvidal? Yes. And writing the purity fetish was super necessary. That's funny. So yeah, solidarity, of course, with the left-wingers in Colombia. It's amazing that they're even able to bring Petro to power. And we talked about the election and what it took, the organizing efforts that it took to get that to happen with members of the Troika Collective who were there, who were part of the organizing efforts for Petro. And they said they would get shot at, they would get attacked. You know, it was very dangerous. Many people were killed by the armed right-wing militias and armed right-wing forces in Colombia that have so much power. So crazy. And Carlos and I, when we talked to them, it reminded us of our experience organizing for the Bernie campaign. And it's like, imagine you're door knocking and then someone just like starts shooting at you, or a bunch of right-wingers, a bunch of Trump supporters pop out of the bushes and just start shooting at you because you're trying to get a socialist candidate into power. That is pretty much the situation in Colombia. There's been a civil war going on for years. All comrades, like the stream. Absolutely. Like, comment, subscribe. Sounds like elections are not working if the CIA is trying to overthrow elected leaders. Yeah. The CIA always, or the US always tries to stay in power through as little violence and as little overt regime change as possible. They try and do it as clandestinely as possible. Like in Bolivia, I've given the example, they supported the liberal candidate forever. But that liberal candidate couldn't win elections over the Socialist Party. So then they started backing a fascist coup. In Chile, when the U.S. backed Pinochet, there were elements that they were supporting, pro-U.S. elements, political elements in the country, who couldn't beat Allende in the election. They did for 2 years with support and funding from the U.S., but then when Allende beat them and became president, then the U.S. shifted to funding and arming Pinochet and his coalition of right-wing extremists who would be willing to commit acts of violence and overthrow the government. Just like the U.S. backed the most violent elements of Ukrainian politics to turn Maidan into a violent coup that would topple the government. CIA are the Hollywood producers. Mel Brooks tried to warn us. Did he? Did he say something about that? Yeah, it's crazy how co-opted Hollywood is. Did you know there's a law or a rule in Hollywood that if you use any U.S. military equipment, the military gets to oversee the entire movie, including the script? If you want your movie to be realistic at all, in terms of the kind of equipment that you have to represent the U.S. military, you basically have to turn your movie into imperialist propaganda for them, under the supervision of some generals or U.S. intelligence or whatever the hell. I am reading some of the things in the chat right now. Man, the Trump indictment is hella dumb. I saw some screens. It's basically Trump yelling an aide about how Obama and Hillary were planning to attack the country. But the Democrats aren't mad about the secret war they and Trump told someone about. Yeah, I was watching the Duran earlier, which is one of the geopolitical news shows that I really like. And they were saying that this is an act of lawfare by the Democrats against Trump, which is a term that I don't know who coined it. I think Vijay Prashad might have been the first one to start using it. But it's basically what happened to Lula da Silva in Brazil, what Jair Bolsonaro did to him. It looked like Lula was going to win the election. Jair did not have popular support. So what was the judge's name? I I can't think of the name of the judge who sentenced Lula, if someone can remind me. But a judge sentenced Lula for some bogus corruption charges, put him in prison so he couldn't win the election. And then Sergio Moro, was that his name? Judge Sergio Moro? I think that was it. But Jair Bolsonaro, then the far right-wing leader who was able to come to power, put that guy in his cabinet or in his administration, gave him a cushy job, position of power with the government for arresting Lula. So this was called lawfare, use of the legal system to control the elections, to control the politics, to silence opposition by throwing them in jail. And as much as we don't like Trump, what else do you call the Democrats trying to lock up Trump or trying to indict Trump or trying to attack Trump through the legal system? Oftentimes with stuff that's completely bogus or completely overblown in order to stop him from running for president in 2024. It's them using the legal system to control the elections, which is pretty wild. Because usually we see lawfare used in countries where the U.S. is trying to support a coup or where they're trying to support a color revolution. So to see like that concept being applied to the U.S. and strangely enough being applied to Trump, it's wild. But that's what happens when you have anything anti-establishment, anyone who's not down with the neocons and the neolibs and the decrepit American political establishment gets attacked by the corporate media that is in so tight with the decrepit American political establishment. Sergio Moro nailed it. Nailed it. What the hell, Cobra? I did not know that about Bolsonaro. Y'all don't even want to know what Cobra just said. I mean, you can read it right now if you're watching this live. Or I guess if you're watching the replay too. I wonder if Koch libertarians are behind the push to take down Trump. Maybe. I think it's like the Biden wing of the Democratic Party and the backers that they have, which are largely the financial sector, of course, the big banks, but also tech capital in Silicon Valley and the pharmaceutical industry, the healthcare industry. Those are some huge donors, some of the most powerful accumulations of capital, sections of the capitalist class in this country right now. And they are the section of the capitalist class that backs the Democrats. The Democrats represent them in the sphere of politics. So I would assume that they're leading it, as well as probably the military industrial complex, but and just like the Democratic politicians who have Trump derangement syndrome. But it may be, it could be the Koch brothers sector too, because they've dumped so much money into setting up that infrastructure of influence and marketing, what's called the Kochtopus. There's so many Koch-backed think tanks that push this like Ayn Randian, Milton Friedman style trickle-down ideology. Maybe they could be against Trump, but I don't know. I feel like Trump also gives them what they want, like with his huge tax break for the rich that he did last time. They never learned. They used the Pied Piper strategy and got Trump elected, and now they're going after Trump to give us DeSantis. It's almost as if the DNC gets paid to lose. Absolutely. I mean, they still haven't learned, but they can't, because of the capitalist and market-based nature and inner logic of the American corporate media, of these outlets like CNN and MSNBC, they can't pass out the Trump coverage because it gets clicks, because they know it's going to draw ratings. So they continually cover Trump and, Trump did this, Trump did that, Trump said this, Trump said that, look what Trump tweeted, Trump is so uniquely evil, even compared to all these other terrible American politicians, or compared to these good American politicians. That's how corporate media portrays it. But they give Trump all this free coverage, right? There were so many studies and analyses done of all the free coverage Trump got from liberal media in 2016, especially, that actually helped them in 2015. But now they're doing it again. They haven't talked about anything except January 6th for the past 3 years. And now all they can talk about is Trump because that's all they got. That's how they get ratings. So it's almost like they're trapped in that cycle. But I don't know. I think Trump beats DeSantis. I don't know what you guys think. That's my analysis. And I mean, I guess if we're talking about the Republican primary, I would rather have Trump than DeSantis. At least he's anti-establishment, and at least he's better on a few of the issues, where DeSantis is just awful, and we know he's part of the corrupt political establishment that has no intention to change and knows exactly what it's doing. I mean, DeSantis oversaw torture at Guantanamo Bay. How much better of an example do you need that he's a part of the empire? Then the dude complains about immigration all the time when he's torturing people in other countries. Like, why do you think people are fleeing their countries, Ron, you meatball dipshit? But anyways, I think Trump will win because I just think the more that people, I heard Shane Gillis, a comedian, say this the other day, like the more people are exposed to DeSantis and the more they actually hear him talk, the less they'll like him. Republicans like the idea of DeSantis. They think they like DeSantis because he's doing all these anti-woke policies in Florida. But when they actually hear that guy talk, working class Americans, I think, are going to realize he's an elitist. He's an establishment hack. He's an imperialist. He's someone who weaponizes issues like immigration for his own political ends. He's someone without any real political principles. And I think they'll go with Trump again. They'll see Trump as a better option. But, I mean, it remains to be seen. Much could change. I haven't seen a ton of the polling either. Average dollar donations for Trump when he launched in 2016 was 34. Bernie, 27. DeSantis, 200. Yeah, I remember that statistic now, Louis. That is wild. And that says it all, doesn't it? That basically says it all about the base of support for those politicians. And that's what I mean, too. Like DeSantis's public profile, and I guess this will continue to happen, but the more he talks, the harder it'll be to cover up his shitty qualities, of which there are so many. But DeSantis's public profile and his look as this Republican hero, similar to Dan Crenshaw, has just been manufactured by pounds and pounds of corporate money and advertising and marketing for this guy who's really not that cool at all in any kind of way. He's not even charismatic. That people, like I said, Republicans just think they like him because they like the idea of him. Eddie, I can voice over your videos to Russian. That would be very cool. Russians are eager to know about communists in the U.S. Well, sweet. Show them us. You should collab with Russian commies, real ones. Sermin Barov, Krupenko. Yeah, I'd be down for sure. I've said that a handful of times that I want to do more appearances on other communist socialist channels internationally. I did Diego Rusarin recently, someone who was born in Brazil but now does Marxist commentary in Mexico and has 1 million subscribers. You heard that right. They have 1 million subscribers talking about communism on the internet. So that was really fun. Obviously, our channel got quite a boost from that, which be sure to like, share, and subscribe, by the way, if you haven't, to our channel. Boost the stream and the algorithm up. Yeah, I would love to visit with more comrades, do more interviews, which we have been doing recently. I was going to say, like, I've been super busy recently just with like exclusively Midwestern Marx related stuff and politics related stuff, like doing panels and movie reviews with other people and getting invited to do interviews and having interviews scheduled to have people on the channel. It just seems like I'm more busy lately, which is good. I think that's probably because of the consistent growth of Midwestern Marx. Books just arrived. Oh, sweet, Jacob. Happy belated birthday. I'm excited to see it. Sorry, I'm doing something really quick here before we get to the next segment. F Trump too, but F DeSantis more. Yeah, I feel the same way. But ideally, what I think the communists got to root for and push people towards this, depending on where they're at going into the 2024 election. RFK in the Democratic Party, or Trump in the Republican Party primary, and then Cornel West third party. I'm going to push Cornel West. He's my number one option. But if people are registered Democrats, if they're committed to the Democratic Party, if they're just not going for Cornel West, I'll encourage them to go RFK. And then in the Republican Party, if I can't convince them to not vote in the Republican primary, and I just have no other option, or they say it's a thing, I'm a Republican, my parents were a Republican, I've always voted Republican, I'll say, okay, fine, vote for Trump. Just don't vote for the meatball DeSantis. Thank you so much, Kyle. And I will hit you up soon on Twitter and on Discord so we can talk about what you wanted to discuss. But thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Could not do what we do at Midwestern Marks without your support, without the support of all y'all comrades. So thank you very much. Being busy means you're doing the work. Right on, comrade. Thank you, Kyle. I agree, and I hope you're right. I know you're right because the Institute is growing, and the more hard work that we put into it, Carlos, Noah, and myself, the more it seems to grow and the more great people we seem to attract. So thank you very, very much. Midwestern Marks gains. I haven't lifted today, actually. Yo, stream keeps freezing. Oh, that's not good. Here, maybe I'll turn my Wi-Fi off on my phone. Let me know if it keeps happening. Both RFK and DeSantis have me thinking that they will cripple their campaigns. Terrible speaking voices. RFK, it's not his fault, but it will still be his downfall. Yeah, it doesn't help. I was thinking that too when I first heard him talk. I was like, that's tough. That's tough that he can't project his voice or yell. Especially if you I know they're probably not going to let him on the debate stage or even host debates, but if they did, that would be hard in a debate if you can't raise your voice, because his condition it makes it so your voice is always hoarse and it always sounds super strained, like you're struggling to speak. So that's tough in a debate, especially if you were hypothetically to win the Democratic primary and then go up against Trump. You got to go up against Trump, and he's just going to talk over you. Trump probably going to make fun of your voice. Doesn't matter who you vote for in the Democratic primaries. It's already been decided. True. RNC would love to have anyone but Trump, so their primary is open. In the general, I'll vote for a socialist. Yep, I'm voting for Cornel West myself. Someone should run as a socialist Republican in the Republican Party. See how that goes. I'll do it. They'll trust me. I look like one of them. He's one of us. Let him in. Then I'll be like, guys, we need health care. We need higher wages. We need unions. We got to stop following these corrupt politicians like DeSantis. Look how many corporate donors he has. We should be socialist Republicans. All right, this guy looks like us, and he's talking sense. So remember the account that we reviewed a while back, King Animals? It was one of those well-produced history accounts that Carlos and I are always complaining about because they look like they get about $700 million from the NED and the CIA to help them with their production value so that they can spread propaganda and lies about history and about socialism. This is one of those accounts. And I debunked or systematically analyzed their video about Russia and China and Iran the other day. But they just released this doozy of a video. Why do we call the war in Ukraine unprovoked? Debunking Russian claims. Spoiler alert, they don't debunk any claims because the war in Ukraine was provoked. And these guys are completely full of it. But it may, in fact, be the case that there are
Talking
more
about right here.
nefarious motivations behind this Kings and Generals account than just ignorance or not knowing history or not being aware of what's going on in Ukraine or being duped by the corporate media, which, of course, if you're a historical account, if you're a research-based account, you shouldn't make a claim, make a 20-minute video about how the war in Ukraine was unprovoked, right? If you're really doing your research, if you're getting to the facts, you know this is not true, unless you're being paid to say otherwise or being overtly, directly manipulated to say otherwise, which Kings and Generals may in fact be, because this is a video that ties them to the NED, the National Endowment for Democracy, the private version of the CIA that basically, or that does serve as an arm of the U.S. State Department, but heavily focuses what they do on propaganda and information wars, information control, combating misinformation, and spreading good information, which of course is code for spreading imperialist propaganda. That's what the NED does. That's what they were super successful in doing in a lot of different regime change efforts, like the coup in Bolivia. But the civil war in Libya and Syria that toppled the Libyan government and threw Syria into a disastrous situation for many years was largely sparked by the NED infiltrating the country with propaganda, forging together coalition groups of different separatists and different extremists, and promoting separatism and violence in the country. So that's what these organizations do. They subvert other countries' governments, other countries' media, other countries' information, to manipulate the political systems in those countries and help promote U.S. interests. Imperialism. We all know this. And I'm not going to show you this whole 40-minute video or 54-minute video about the connections between YouTube channels, history YouTube channels, and the CIA or the NED. But thankfully, this guy was nice enough to post his sources for us. He had an entire Google document of sources, but he also posted this on Twitter. X-Gaming turned history YouTube channels are literally fronts for the effing CIA. The NED, I'm going to retweet this, by the way. The NED was meant to defend against these scandals by putting certain programs out in the open. The sugar daddy of overt operations has been the National Endowment for Democracy. So, as I said at the beginning of this segment, Carlos and I are complaining about these history channels all the time. We're complaining about these propaganda channels all the time because they have such good production value. They have such good animation. Their videos look so nice and they're so easy to watch. But people think they're just getting objective history. People think they're getting quote-unquote unbiased history when they're getting the most Western, pro-Western slanted neoliberal version or lens of history that they could ever get. Literally the version of history that's written by the NED and the CIA. Edited into these easily digestible little animations and then pumped out in mass to kids where they get millions of views. And they're rewriting history. They're indoctrinating an entire generation of people or an entire populace of people, erasing the historical truth in order to continue taking imperialist actions abroad, such as the arming and funding of neo-Nazi extremists in Ukraine in order to wage a proxy war against Russia. Thank you so much, Kyle Pettis. Hooray, these are the videos I put in the stream suggestion. He's a personal friend of mine, the guy who made this video, who I'm trying to get you in contact with directly. He became a patron yesterday. Oh, this is your friend that you mentioned. Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. I'm so glad that I got a chance to cover this. Yeah, this is super interesting stuff. Really appreciate you for sending it. And thank you so much for the $10 super chat, supporting the project. Appreciate you a ton. And for being a Patreon and a YouTube member. You're all over the place, Kyle. You're the man. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is great research from your friend. So tell him thank you, and I'll definitely get in touch with him. And if he wants to work together and collaborate with Midwestern Marx, we definitely could. All right. I at least love to boost his great research like this. Okay, so I better get back to it now. Thank you so much, guys. So what do we have here? This video was made by Leafsick when the script was developed. The script was developed, so literally the person who wrote the video was Turgut Gambar. This guy there. Turgut Gambar is an employee for the National Endowment for Democracy. So this script was written for them by the NED. They edited together this nice little presentation on behalf of the National Endowment for Democracy, the CIA cutout aimed at US-backed regime change and aimed at manipulating people in other countries and spreading regime change propaganda. So Carlos and I had an inkling forever. We had a hunch that these history channels were being propped up by the State Department, or being at the very least propped up by NGOs and think tanks and bot accounts that like and comment on their stuff, which I'm sure that's a big aspect of it as well. I'm sure they bought the shit out of all these videos to boost them in the algorithm and get them going, because they all just get millions of views. But the script is literally being written by the NED. And sometimes when I see stuff like this, I start to freak out. Like, they're just propagandizing so many kids, man. Propagandizing so many teenagers who are doing their due diligence, who are like, I'm going to research the war in Ukraine. I'm going to research some stuff by looking it up on YouTube. What's happening in the war in Ukraine? What's happening with Russia, China, and Iran? Give me this history. And the history they're getting is being written for them by the National Endowment for Democracy, who is mass disseminating propaganda on social media and everywhere. And this goes to show what Carlos always says, that social media is another battleground of class struggle. It's another battleground for the propaganda war. And that's why we're seeing so many crackdowns on technology and freedom of speech and combating cyber misinformation or whatever, because they're terrified of this. They're terrified of what the internet could be as a tool for spreading the truth. So they have to use the tactics of the internet to spread imperialist propaganda and to suppress the truth, censor TikTok accounts like Midwestern Marx, while creating accounts like Kings and Generals, who will read off the State Department script and who won't be skeptical. The role, and look at what this guy does. Look at what he literally does for the NED. The role of social media in democracy movements. The case of Azerbaijan. That was the last article he wrote for them. So he literally talks about the role of social media in democracy movements, which, if you don't know, in imperialist NED, CIA, US intelligence speak, that means overthrowing another country's democracy. That means regime change. That's all the US does when they bring democracy or freedom to a country. By democracy movements, they mean extremist, separatist rebel groups, like the ones that they backed in Bolivia in 2019, and Ukraine in 2014, and Libya and Syria as earlier than 2011. So that's this guy's job, is spreading propaganda on social media, and that's who's writing the scripts for Kings and Generals, which is why I had a bunch of problems with the last Kings and Generals video that I watched, which we reacted to on stream. He's a founding board member of the civic movement. Promote democratization in Azerbaijan through nonviolence. Yeah, I'm sure you do, buddy. He also helped found the youth movement that engages in youth democracy building. So this guy's a special kind of jerk bag. He specifically focuses on propagandizing the youth, on democratizing the youth, on convincing kids and children over social media to support U.S. imperialism and support regime change. So his job is to make stuff like Kings and Generals that counteracts what we're doing, or the viral videos that we've done on social media exposing U.S. imperialism. This dude's job is to make sure that the kids remain pro-war, that the kids remain neoliberals or neoconservatives. Wild. And then here's all the connections that the NED had to the color revolution in 2014 in Ukraine, and about propaganda in Ukraine in general. So, of course, no surprise that the NED would be funding pro-proxy war propaganda here at home as well. And that's the thing that I try and get through to people. Like, the NED and the U.S. imperialists and the USAID, NGOs, whatever, when they do these regime change efforts, when they try and overthrow a country's democracy, they propagandize us here in the U.S. to get us to support it. And they do it in the target country. So the NED and Bellingcat and all these other arms of the State Department spend tons and tons of money on marketing and propaganda in the target country and here at home in the U.S. So they can hit both fronts and turn everybody against the Assad government or the Gaddafi government or Saddam Hussein's government or Evo Morales' government, whoever it is that they want to topple for moving away from neoliberalism. Hey, Eddie, I missed the majority of your stream today, but I want to know if you have any books on how Cuba took back their country. Thanks. Off topic, I know. Thank you so much, Pop Satch. Really, really appreciate the $5 super chat. Appreciate your support so much. No worries about missing the stream. You can always rewatch it and stuff. You could read Che by John Lee Anderson. That's a biography of Che Guevara's life. That'll tell you how Cuba took their country back. That's what I would recommend. Read that. And it's good to read Che, too. Just read about the life of a revolutionary that was truly... he was truly a disciplined person and truly an amazing person and someone who dedicated himself to revolution and to freeing not even his country, but his continent, or not even his continent, but the Americas south of the United States, because he was from Argentina, but then traveled to Cuba and helped Fidel with the revolution. So, yeah, read Che. And it's a really accurate and really well-documented, well-researched book. And John Lee Anderson traveled to Cuba, or traveled all across Cuba to do it. Thank you so much, Louis. Really, really appreciate $10 super chat. You didn't have to do that. We appreciate you, though, so much. Networking with the striking AY McDonald's workers in Dubuque and met a fan of the channel. Made my day. Solidarity forever. That's awesome, Louis. I hope... I'm glad to hear that you're doing that. I'm having a CPUSA meeting soon. There's 7 new members of CPUSA. I'll have to message you somehow and let you know when we hold that meeting so you can be there and we can get in touch. Because we have to find a project to work on, too, somewhere to put our energy right away. So we could help out with the striking AY McDonald workers. Actually, one of my roommates is an engineer there. But either way. Would love to get more involved with that. Trying to get more involved with the community organizing because I've had so many people reach out and say that they're in the area and that they joined CPUSA or got involved because of Midwestern Marx. So I think we could really get some stuff going. Hit me up. Carlos has my number. You bet. You bet. You bet. All right, I have another video about how bad economics destroyed Venezuela, but I can't do it today, folks. I can't do it. I can't go through a whole nonsensical video lying about the Bolivarian Revolution, lying about the people in Venezuela who have been standing up against the oligarchy. So, book recommendations about Marxism and EUA. I don't even know what EUA stands for. I'm sorry. Is that Europe? Europe is not my specialty, unfortunately. Whoa, another $10 super chat. The super chats are raining in today. It is raining cats and dogs. Support for Midwestern Marx flowing in. Thank you so much, Sebastian. Thank you, Ross. Thank you, Louis. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Pop Satch. Thank you, everyone who gave to our project. Promise we'll put it to good use. Keep spreading the word. Just went back and watched your interview with Rockhill. That's like my favorite piece of content we've ever done. Best one I've seen from the Institute. Highly recommend to all. By the way, I personally messaged you the article on Discord trying to get in touch. Absolutely. I have like 33 unread Discord messages right now, and I've been trying to check our Twitter and our Facebook and our Instagram DMs while also keep up with our email. So I'm sorry I didn't see that, but I will definitely check that as soon as possible. I've been doing better at staying up to date with Discord. So thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoyed the interview with Rockhill. He's a great mind, a great thinker, and his work exposing the Frankfurt School is so important for Marxism. So important. I've been vocal about how much that helped me in my development and understanding things theoretically and understanding my own theoretical principles. So I will definitely check out what you sent me on Discord, Sebastian. Thank you. Cats and dogs. Geez, Sam Dixon. You're too kind. Thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing you next week at the Marxism class. We are studying basics of Marxism right now, which Noah Kratchvik is teaching. Sam has been there. Need a tune, my friend? Yeah, send one over, Sam. Send one over before we call it. But it's been really fun. It's great to see what a diverse group of working class people we have in the audience at Midwestern Marx who are all eager to learn, who are all eager to get more active and involved and organize and advance the cause and the struggle of labor. So yeah, really been enjoying those classes to the point where I want to teach my own. I really want to do my own Midwestern Marx University class over Zoom. So we are covering Engels' Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific chapters 1 through 2. Please join. Yeah, and that'll be live streamed as well. We've been live streaming them. So where can I find the curriculum? It's posted on our Patreon. We'll post it on our Twitter here soon too. Book with 5 prefaces and introductions. Truly. Dogs and cats, thank you so much, Pop Sag. Yeah, it's coming in like crazy now. Super chat. Everywhere. Thank you. The prefaces and introductions in Utopian and Scientific are good, though. I like them all. What's the deal with rainbow capitalism? Good or bad? What do you think? We're Marxists. Capitalism isn't all of a sudden good just because they slap rainbow stickers on it. The jets and the tanks that they use to topple other countries' governments and throw them into chaos aren't all of a sudden good because they slap a rainbow sticker on it. I'm just kidding. I'm being funny right now. Thank you so much for the $2 super chat, Lemonheads. But yeah, wokeism is just the ideology of the rainbow capitalism, if you want to call it that, is just the ideology of the ruling class right now. Right? That's the ideology that the empire uses. And then they say, we're not an empire. Look, some of us are black. Some of us are Asian. Some of us are gay. How could we be an empire when there's gay people in the CIA? You know? Come on now. Look, we have a rainbow flag. Who cares if we toppled Bolivia's socialist government that gave unprecedented rights and privileges to indigenous people and replaced them with a fascist dictatorship that promptly murdered a bunch of indigenous people? Okay, we still care about oppressed communities. We still care about the indigenous. One of our directors is gay. So yeah, that's the ideology of the ruling class right now. But Vouch said it's good. Yes. That's how you know it's bad. Book recommendations about Marxism in the USA. Yes. The Purity Fetish and the Crisis of Western Marxism by Carlos Garrido, available in the store section of MidwesternMarx.com. And the Journal of American Socialist Studies, which I'm published in, also published by Midwestern Marx. We have 2. I'm sure there are a bunch more. You should obviously read W.B. Du Bois and people who are cited and recommended in our journals and in Carlos's book. And also, you could read like William Z. Foster and Communist Heroes of the Past, Gus Hall. Those are good ones. But the Journal of American Socialist Studies is aimed at being an explicitly socialist history and socialist perspective on the United States. So I give an analysis of U.S. imperialism in the first one and an analysis of U.S. healthcare in the second one. Carlos gives the history of scientific socialism in the U.S. and utopian socialism, and Noah gives something similar about the history of CPUSA. So yeah, that's my recommendation. It's literally called the Journal of American Socialist Studies, so it's perfect. And it's explicitly Marxist, of course. You should do one on inventing reality and how people can individually discern propaganda and break it down / trace funding. That would be awesome. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat, Sebastian. Really appreciate you doing that. Sorry, I was reading another comment. That would be awesome. I should break down inventing reality and do a video about it. That would be sweet. That would be a great idea. Go through that book in depth. But one thing that I wanted to do, because this is something one of my favorite professors who now writes for Midwestern Marx used to do, was he would have us look at an issue for class. This was an assignment. Pick any issue in the global news or in the global media and look at the corporate sources about it, the mainstream sources about it, and then what independent media said about it or what foreign outlets said about it. Like if it's an American issue, what did Chinese sources say about it or African sources or whatever? And then you would have to compare and contrast how the issue was explained in the media, how it was portrayed in the media versus, corporate media versus independent media. And that, more than anything else, helped me see how messed up our political system is, how messed up the American ruling class is, and how thoroughly we're lied to and brainwashed by imperialism. Because when you start to look at what's actually going on in the independent journalism and scholarly journalism and journalism from outside the corporate media bubble, and then you compare it to corporate media, you're like, oh my gosh, this is just blatant propaganda. They're just blatantly lying to people. I remember the issue I did was the war in Yemen. And I was comparing, this was the first analysis I did for that class. I did a couple of them, media analysis. I can't remember what he called the assignment, but I looked at how these pro-Yemeni genocide sources were arguing in favor of genociding Yemeni civilians in order to make money for the military-industrial complex, and then compared that to actual journalists who were reporting on the horrific human rights crisis going on in Yemen because we were bombing their water sanitation facilities and their farms and their roads and their infrastructure. But then once you learn to deconstruct it like that in your head, you realize they're lying about everyone, right? You can trace the sources on all of these corporate media outlets and see that they're nefariously funded, or that the sources that they're pulling from are, they're taking them out of context, or they're sketchy sources. Like almost all their North Korea reporting comes from South Korean tabloids, like People Magazine in South Korea. And then their source is like, oh, we called 2 people on the phone in North Korea and they told us that everybody eats rats. And then 27 US media outlets reported as if it's true. And it's really easy to break down once you know how to do it and once you know how to check their sourcing. But long story short, I've wanted to do one of those media comparisons live on stream. Say, give me an issue. I'm going to look at how the independent media reports on it versus how the corporate media reports on it. And then we're going to break down how the corporate media is, how they're framing their propaganda, how they're sourcing their lies. Thank you so much for the $5, Sebastian. Cafe Millennial, thank you, Battle Cossack, for the 225 Argentinian dollars. A lefty podcast starring a communist and an anarchist talking about politica while making cocaine jokes. Oh, that sounds interesting. Anarchists usually end up getting on my nerves. They'll say one thing I agree with, and I'll be like, haha, and then they'll say something bad about Fidel or Mao or whatever. I'm like, get out of here. Thank you so much for 225. Appreciate it. All right, y'all. I'm about to wrap up the power hour. We've gone longer than an hour at this point. I was planning on keeping it to an hour, but y'all kept killing it with the super chats. We got 11 super chats today. Thanks so much again to everybody who left the super chat. Lemonhead, Sam Dixon, Sebastian, Louie, Popsatch, Kyle, Ross, Battle Cossack. Appreciate you all so much. Thanks for hanging out with us on this Saturday. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Solidarity forever.